Welcome this morning, folks. This is Randy with Snap Judgments, and I'm back with Peter Quinn from Draft Professors, a Seattle Seahawks fan and podcaster. We wanted to get him back in here after the Super Bowl so we could get a Seattle fans' take. Regardless of the outcome, this was scheduled beforehand, but I think it's good to get a Seattle fans' take. So, welcome to the podcast, Peter. Before we get into football, we do occasionally touch on some other sports here. And so while I am a Seattle fan on, I don't know the next time this is going to happen. I just wanted to get this question out. Would you be a fan of a Seattle basketball team if they added one? And are you a fan of the overall idea?
Yes, I think I would actually. I've been a little bit kind of nomadic in my NBA support. I tend to just kind of enjoy the game rather than actually having a team to root for so far. So that would I think that would give me a team to properly support and follow. So that'd be quite good. I think as well, judging from things I've seen from some of the Seattle media who are local to the area, I think it sounds like it'd be a massive boost for the community there. Kind of losing Supersonics kind of hit them really pretty hard, and I think that yeah, it's still something that's regularly brought up. We've seen just this season the success, obviously of the Seahawks now, but the Mariners as well has had a massive impact on the kind of support in the area, and I think that's it's often understated the impact that sport can have on a local community. So I think that would be phenomenal for the Seattle area, the wider Washington State, and Pacific Northwest as a whole if they were able to get an NBA team based there again.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, Seattle's certainly big enough to host another professional sports team. And I know that losing the basketball team hit them hard. I was much deeper into the NBA back in the day. And that was a rough time for Seattle, certainly losing them over to Oklahoma City. I wonder, do you think they'd be called the Sonics as well, or do you think they would go with a new name and a new identity, or what?
I feel like it would be tough to go back to the Sonics while obviously with the Thunder still being a team. I think that would create um, a bit of awkwardness perhaps. So I think that most likely they end up getting a new name. I'm not entirely sure what it'd be off the top of my head, but yeah, I think they'd go for something new, a fresh start. Kind of the whole fresh brand sort of thing, rather than trying to. It means that there's not that pressure to immediately make it what the Supersonics were to fans, and they can kind of gradually build it up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it would make the record books would start getting very confusing if it were the Sonics again, whose franchise records were whose and so forth. It would remind me kind of the whole like Colts, Ravens, Browns scenario back in the day, which I wasn't really paying that close attention to the league to like really follow that. But I know it felt like a little mixed up from a passive fan point of view back in the day. I will add in that this is one of the greatest investment opportunities, right? Because the new ownership groups are going to have to write the NBA a check for 500 million each team. That's your buy-in to be a part of the NBA. And the average NBA franchise value right now is 4.6 billion, with the lowest teams being 3.2. So, I mean, I mean, if your valuation is going to be pretty much in the billions immediately, $500 million check is not a lot to write. So at any rate, we're going to move on to football here and get right into the game. Look, from a Patriots fan perspective, I understand Patriots fans are upset. They are frustrated. I've heard some that are extremely angry, willing to throw in the towel on the team and in May and Will Campbell and whoever else. And we're going to get into the specifics of the game. But I just want to say, from a Patriots fan perspective, this was a great season. They overachieved relative to roster expectations, timeline. They built a culture that made them a desirable free agent destination. I mean, there's already talk about, superstars who potentially want to come play here. And, I just feel like if this is the ground floor of this coaching regime administration, like, man, I'm fired up about the years to come and what they're going to grow into, because the ground floor being a Super Bowl appearance, like that's a pretty high floor. So what do you think about the Patriots kind of like overall, uh, just future perspective, I guess? Did you feel like this game changed your mind about whether or not they have a promising future, if they need to completely reevaluate some things, or what?
I don't think it changed very much at all for me. I think that they are definitely, they've got some really good young talent there. Obviously Drake May being a really young quarterback. He took some blows to his confidence, I imagine, throughout this game. But again, he'll be desperate to get back. You've got Vrabel, who is as we mentioned, an excellent coach for the most part, and should be a steady pair of hands for some time. Christian Gonzalez on defense. I mean, that guy's an insanely good player. I hadn't, I'd seen bits and pieces of him here and there before, but obviously he'd had these injury issues at times in the past as well. But some of the plays that he made in that game were outstanding, and there's so much to build around as well. Like, it's a really deep defensive front. They managed to get more out of the defense, I think, than just the sum of its parts, which is always a useful situation to have, particularly in the defensive line. There's so much to build around there. I think that this is a roster, as you mentioned, that could be strengthened even further by another good free agency. They had a good one last year, I think, and another good year of that. This roster could just continue to grow and improve. And with a young, talented quarterback like that, it's another year's experience. He's played under the biggest lights against, a really phenomenal defense. And that fourth quarter, he made some, really, really good throws here and there. It was, perhaps a bit too little, too late, and we still had a few mistakes in there late in the game as well that maybe made the difference. But there's plenty to work with. He didn't completely shy away from the moment, I think. I think it was just that Seattle defense, the way that they played on the night, would have stopped pretty much anybody. I think there's plenty to look forward to for, if you're a Patriots fan. It maybe doesn't feel like it right now. I completely understand that. But from an outsider's perspective, this team could be set to contend for a good long while.
Yeah, well, I agree with you there. I mean, this reminded me, as a Patriots fan, of the New York Giants Super Bowls, where that defensive line just dominated. There was very little we could do, and the opposing quarterback, it felt like, kind of did just enough to win the game. From a Seahawks perspective, before we really dig into the nitty gritty of the game, I just kind of want to get your perspective as someone who covers Seattle. What did this Super Bowl feel like from the Seattle side? Did it feel like relief, validation, dominance, revenge? Did it feel like an afterthought, and like the NFC Championship was really the Super Bowl? I've heard a lot of that talk. How did you feel about the game as you're watching it and after you won?
So, in terms of what I felt at the time, and this was kind of reinforced by some kind of pundits and some of the media that I've heard afterwards talking about it when they've spoken with the players, it was, there's always going to be that fear going into a Super Bowl match that oh, what if what if the Patriots offense and May can manage to do a number on the defense? Suddenly they can't. It turns out they're not quite as elite in the big moments, but underneath that, you still have got the Seattle defense. I think should, based on what we've seen this season, have been good enough to win that game, and eventually it was. So I think it was reaffirming what I would have hoped and expected beforehand. But you always just have that doubt in your mind that maybe maybe this is the time that something goes wrong. Maybe if the Patriots had, if Darnold had thrown a few interceptions and the Patriots had good field position, the kind of momentum would change and it wouldn't go the way of Seattle. But I think based on what I've seen from the defense this year, yes, it all came together for them. But it was, to me, I would say like it kind of reaffirmed what I'd already expected from the defense, and the offense did just enough, as you mentioned, to kind of get over the line. I think apparently it sounded like some of the players were saying a kind of similar thing, that they were, you're always wary, you're going up against good opposition in a big moment, but at the same time, like kind of looking around the locker room, they were like, yeah, we should have this. We have enough talent on the defense to really cause problems for anyone. And yeah, so I think I don't know about revenge as much. I think it was maybe putting to bed some of um, the fear that had gone every time that Malcolm Butler appeared on a television screen for Seattle fans, I think. But yeah, I didn't see too much about it, being about revenge or anything. I think that it perhaps it felt at times during the match like it should have been more comfortable, given what the defense were managing to do. But yeah, I think it kind of just solidified in my mind certainly what I thought this team was, and it was, yeah, definitely reassuring to know that they can manage that. I mean, the defense won that game. So yeah, I think it was good to know, and it's something that they can manage to maintain over a good 2 years if they manage to re-sign some crucial upcoming free agents as well.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, it was a great win. I gotta know, were you on the edge of your seat as much as I was the first quarter of that game, watching the back and forth between the offense and defense with our secondary specifically? Just they were playing so aggressive. It felt like to be honest with you, it felt like they had tuned into exactly what I was saying last week, where it was like if you get Darnold off his game early, then he never climbs back on the horse. And it felt like they were operating with that game plan, like they were trying their hardest to get him off his game early, and he just played just well enough. I mean, I was astonished, frankly, by Darnold's pocket presence, his ability to just kind of slip. We saw it for years, and I'm not comparing him at all overall game wise with Tom Brady, but Tom Brady was a master of pocket presence and pocket manipulation and being able to, sack avoidance without having a great amount of mobility. And I thought I saw a lot of that sort of thing out of Sam Darnold this game, where his pocket manipulation he was really on point. There were so many times that Milton Williams would just blow past Bradford, blow past Sandell, blow past both of them in some cases, and come screaming at Darnold and miss him by inches. And then Darnold would make a throw that, hey, listen, it might not have hit the wide receiver, but it also didn't get picked. And man, they were really, really close. I was literally on the edge of my seat, like, oh, they got him. No, they didn't get him. And as a Seattle fan, were you as much on the edge of your seat going, oh my God, just missed it?
Yeah, it's certainly early on. I think the first completion that he had was to AJ Barner, and I mean that was maybe 6 inches away from being a pick six. So I had a lot of fear in that particular moment. Yeah, I thought the DBs were making like really great kind of plays to try and undercut Darnold and get that big play early, as you say, to throw him off his game. And he, I think I would describe it as you did there. He was just accurate enough. I thought that he was a little bit off all game. Just kind of throws being maybe 1 yard away from where the receiver wanted it, which is quite uncharacteristic. Usually when he's on schedule, he was kind of fine this season at landing it, kind of in the breadbasket for the receiver, exactly where they wanted it. And that was off all day long, particularly when he was targeting JSN early and then Cooper Cup at times throughout the match as well. I think his pocket presence surprised even me. I think that he's been very good at sack avoidance this year. But I think the one thing that he's been good at all year, and it showed through as well in this game, was the keeping the eyes downfield when like kind of heavy pressure was coming. Sure, some of the throws were a little bit off, but he didn't have the play like May did kind of where it was just under a bit of pressure and you're going, that throw needed to be 10 yards, somewhere else. That was a big miss. Um, I think that like keeping the eyes downfield, still being aware of what's going on. We saw a bit of it in the NFC Championship game as well with a couple of his touchdown throws, and now in the Super Bowl as well. I think it was excellent, probably the deciding factor for me because both defenses were getting some real heavy pressure, and I think that Darnold's ability to keep his eyes downfield and be brave enough to take shots, even you know, while keeping the ball out of harm's way for the most part, was a big difference. Because I thought that it looked like for the first 3 quarters that May was a little bit spooked, got a little bit gun shy in terms of not wanting to take that shot or try to force it into areas he wasn't sure they could. His receiver would be favourite to win it, and then obviously we saw with the 2 long completions to Mac Hollins, that's what kind of sparked a little bit of a revival. I think that in the first 3 quarters he maybe doesn't pull the trigger on either of those throws. So yeah, I think that was definitely a big factor for me, was that Darnold was able to escape that immediate pressure, keep his eyes downfield, and take a kind of a measured shot. Whereas I think that the Patriots offense struggled to kind of keep on track when the pressure came.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, speaking of the Mac Hollins drive, really, because it was the 2 throws to him, but it was really the entire drive, pretty much. I felt like Mac Hollins has really been an emotional leader for this team. That's the character that he is anyway, no matter where he is. But I just felt like, from a fan perspective, I literally like turned to the kids and I was like, "Dude, that dude just said, no, we're not getting shut out." Like,
Yep.
that wide receiver right there was just like, nope, we're not getting shut out. I don't care what happens. I'm making this play. Because it was 2 plays, 2 great catches. Like, they were good throws too. But I mean, they're right into triple coverage on the first catch, I think. And the second one over the short, deep over. Again, being covered. Those are plays that, you don't see Matt Collins make all the time. And like I told the kids then, I said, look, if he made those plays every time, he wouldn't be Matt Collins. He'd be Randy Moss. Okay. He stepped up in the moment and just said, my team needs some sort of hope, because we had seen it on the telecast where they showed the defense on the bench just looking dejected. And I was like, man, it might be over, because those guys look like, they've been riding the defense. It's the only reason they've had a shot. And if the defense is about to go, again, they gave it back again, then the game's we're really in trouble here. But then Mac Hollins stepped up just in that moment where the team exactly needed him and said, no, we're not done. Okay, we're not getting shut out. That's just how it is. And then again, like I said earlier, I think if Dre had just made that one throw to Kyle Williams, we could be talking about a very different game here. I mean, certainly would have been a very different scenario, deep in the fourth quarter, 19-14 versus 19-7, which eventually turned into the, 26-13 game overall. The defense on Seattle's side won this game. The offense never found its footing. And at the end of the day, the real issue for us was the offensive line. Will Campbell was recorded by Next Gen Stats as having given up 14 quarterback pressures. Now, you can go to different services and find different numbers, find the number that suits you or whatever. But the lowest numbers I've seen were 7, and that's still unacceptable. I wanted to get into this quote that I heard from Devin Witherspoon, where he was talking to Sirius XM NFL radio yesterday or the night before. I'm not entirely sure. But he said, I knew what was going on. We had a good tell on what they like to do and how they like to play and how they were going to attack us. Coach put us in the best position to win. That's our coach right there. That's why we always stand beside him and always have his back. Witherspoon says tape study revealed that the offensive linemen on the Patriots often show what they're going to do by how they line up. He said, we had a tell on their guards and their tackles, how they like to set, They're going to overset on certain rushes. They're going to fall for certain moves anytime a group of guys gets after them. And today, I think we did that. So, what's your reaction to that overall quote?
I think it kind of explains a bit of what went on because Witherspoon, I think I saw something that he had maybe 21 pass rushing snaps throughout the season, and they were dialing that up in the first half. Even from deep, coming from miles away, bringing both him and Nick Eamon at the same time. Um, and I think that if that was triggered by what they saw from the Patriots O line, that would make sense because it seemed like they were just dialing up at the perfect moments each time. So I think it maybe it clarifies a little bit the success that they had because Witherspoon, when he as a blitzer, is good when he gets a clear path, but often he can get stonewalled and that causes problems for us in the back end. So the success rate that he had in this match, where it seemed like every time they were bringing him kind of to go after the quarterback, he was getting almost a clear path, and blowing up the play immediately. I think yeah, it makes sense that they had some sort of something going on there that they were seeing that they liked, because at first I thought that it was maybe just the communication from the Patriots O line wasn't good enough to pick, kind of in terms of picking these designs, pressures, and blitzes up. But yeah, I think there must have been something else because otherwise it would have been very lucky to hit on the timing that they did throughout the
Yeah.
entire game, because I know that there's a lot of youth on that Patriots O line, but the success rate on when they sent extra blitzers was um, above what I expected because they didn't. I think they didn't blitz too much. The rate was kind of consistent with what they had all season. I think somewhere around 15%. But the success they had in that was far higher than usual.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pressure rate was something like 54%. Drake May got pressured 28 times in the game, and I think he threw 43 times. So not good. I thought that, it was as much a personnel issue as a schematic issue. I thought probably equal. I don't know if blame's the right fault, whatever it is. But I thought we saw the Patriots offensive line players get absolutely manhandled on multiple occasions. This one right here, pictured on the screen, being one of 5 snaps that Riley Mills played, in which he dog walked Jared Wilson back into Drake May, just single-handedly abused him. I've been talking about Jared Wilson being the weak link of this line all year long. He simply doesn't have the strength, power, anchor, sand in the pants, whatever you want to call it, to hold up to powerful interior rushers in a one-on-one situation. And he hasn't really shown the ability to work those stunts and loops with Will Campbell either. I do think that he's going to be a good center in this league at some point in time because I think he's quick thinking, and I think the way I see that in action on the field is whenever there's a fumble in that area, it seems to me that Jared Wilson's always the guy who's on top of it, which shows to me quick thinking, quick reactivity in the moment when, the pressure's on kind of sort of thing. He certainly has. I mean, he was center at Georgia starting just a year after Cedric Van Pran got drafted, who had been the starter for a couple years. But I think he's got to move in a center. I think we saw Will Campbell get just, he had some bad reps. Okay. I don't think he's a left tackle. I think that he needs to move in a left guard. I think the sooner you have that conversation, the better, because I think honestly, if they move him to left guard, I think it's a drastic improvement over Jared Wilson. And I don't think anybody that they replace Will Campbell with at left tackle could possibly do a much worse job than he did. Whether it be Vidarian Lowe, Munford, whoever, I honestly don't care. That's my evaluation. As somebody who is a draft guy as much as you are a football fan, you're well aware of the evaluations of Will Campbell coming in, and yet you were well aware, I imagine, of Jared Wilson coming out of Georgia, and you really only had experience at center. Um, the body type and so forth, because he's a little on the lighter side. He's something like 305 ish, which is not really what you would typically, like on Wayne, you on the other side is like 325, 330, a big
Yeah.
hulking guy, and he comes into camp all the time. People are worried that he's 340 or 350, and then he spends the entire season just, steamrolling people, and it doesn't really matter. Jared Wilson on the other side of that. What's your evaluation of those two players, kind of from an independent standpoint, after watching this game and whatever other film you watched in preparation for this game?
Yeah, so actually an interesting one is that I wasn't quite as high on Jared Wilson as a prospect as some others in the draft community. I know that a few of the draft professors had him as a potential kind of up early round 2 guy. I think was it round 3 that he was taken in the end, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was
Um,
picked 95 or 96, something like that.
Yeah, and I think for me, I looked at that and thought, oh, okay, as a centre prospect, fair enough. I agree. I think he seems like he's quite an intelligent player for the most part. I think that he's maybe not as fluid a mover for someone who is kind of, I mean, very light for a guard, even for a centre. I kind of worry a little bit about the size profile, but yeah, I thought that I agree that I think he could have been a good centre in the league long term. So I was surprised when I saw that he was the left guard for the Patriots kind of mid season, roughly. Kind of when I saw that, that was a little bit odd because I didn't think that he had a kind of profile that would necessarily translate that well. Will Campbell, I think this is one of the clearest examples of why people care about arm length that I've seen. Like the amount of snaps that Derek Hall in particular, but occasionally Demarcus Lawrence as well, where the first contact between the two players is Hall right in at the chest, driving him backwards while Campbell's not laid a glove on him yet. I think that was quite clear to see there. I absolutely get moving him into guard. I think he does quite a few things well. He's still a pretty nice run blocker for the most part. I think that even in that match, there was a few snaps that he did quite nicely, despite the fact that his confidence had obviously been hit pretty badly. I think that he's somebody who, I wouldn't even be surprised if they maybe gave him perhaps one more year even at tackle. I definitely think that, or at least, sorry, rather than one more year, they maybe start the season with him next year at left tackle before deciding, now, okay, we need to do something else. I, I think that the O line would immediately improve if you had a solid left tackle and then moved Campbell and Wilson one step inside. I think that even the Wilson one, I think needs that's an important one early. That needs to be done now. I don't see any future for him at guard really. I
Yeah.
think maybe with the right, kind of as his experience builds, you maybe could manage to make an NFL tackle out of Campbell. But I think at times there will be matchups where he just, not as bad as this, but in future I think there will be times that you have to accept, if he's staying at left tackle, you're gonna lose sometimes. Like in terms of the matchups, there's going to be some really bad reps in there in a match. So it depends if you're willing to sacrifice the kind of the bad for the good in that regard. I think that moving him to guard's probably a safer bet though, yeah.
That's kind of how I had put it on the episode yesterday, was that my position on Will Campbell was always that I thought he would be a top 15 to 20 left tackle, probably a top 20 to 25 left tackle coming into the league. I thought that his ceiling was a top 15 to 20 left tackle, that he would never be better than than the 15th or 16th best left tackle in the league. And that an average left tackle is going to get exposed versus elite pass rushers. They're going to have very, very ugly reps. And it's going to be a problem when you're trying to compete at the next level, which I didn't think we were going to this year. So I wasn't that worried about it until all of a sudden it was like, well, here we are in the AFC Championship and the playoffs, deep in a playoff run. Yeah, he's going to get exposed. Okay. And it's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that it convinced them all to make the transition on inside. So Drake May, let's talk a little bit about him because he didn't have the day that everybody had hoped he would have, obviously, from our side. But he did, in interesting ways. Like if you look at the QBRs between May and Darnold had about a 54 QBR and May had a 16 QBR. But if you look at the passer rating, May had a 79.1 and Darnold had a 74. So the QBR takes into account, rushing, sacks, etc., where the passer rating doesn't. It's just pure throws. May went 27 of 43, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 6 sacks. They had accredited 7 at one point in time, and then they changed 1 to a tackle for loss on a broken play. So 6 total sacks. Again, the 16.3 QBR, 79.1 passer rating. Not a good game, clearly. Not really fair to judge him completely based off that game. He never found his rhythm. The pressure was getting there. I felt like you could see May on the telecast literally looking over his shoulder because he didn't trust his protection. And I didn't think he should trust his protection. I thought his protection was horrible. I mean, Will Campbell talked about he would fight and die for his quarterback. Listen, I just need him to play left guard for his quarterback. Or right guard, maybe. I don't know. We're already set at right guard, but left guard would be great. Look, he threw a couple interceptions, bad ones, but he did continue competing despite the issues. Watching from the other side, did you feel like you saw a young quarterback melting down and that this game will kind of define him going forward and this is who he is? Or did you feel like you saw a young quarterback surviving a tough situation and he's got stuff to build on and hopefully is still bright future ahead of him where he's still going to be considered kind of a top 10 quarterback coming into next season?
Yeah, much closer to the latter there. I think I don't think it was necessarily too big for him. I think that any quarterback would have struggled in that situation. I was surprised in large part by the game planning for him as well. The first drive had some success, marched maybe 30 or 40 yards down the field, I think, if memory serves, by kind of getting nice dump offs to the running back, kind of moving the pocket here or there. And that just didn't seem to be happening. I know that the protection losing quickly made an impact on the play design that was available to the Patriots, I suppose. But I think, the screen game wasn't tried as often as I expected in the first half. I was also surprised that they didn't look for kind of some quick throws to receivers in the flat either, or tight ends out into the flat. I thought that we'd see a lot more of that. Test Seattle's tackling out wide early on, because as you mentioned in our pod last week, potentially getting Travion Henderson even running outside the tackles. When you get out there, it's one missed tackle can be a touchdown, and in a Super Bowl environment, you like your chances of that. So I was surprised that they didn't make things easier for Drake May in the first half to let him kind of grow into the game. And I think that maybe factored into him. He did look lost at times, but I think that's only natural with the kind of the flow of the game. I was surprised he didn't use his mobility more often. He didn't scramble. Not many designed run plays or anything like that. Which again I'd expected a little bit more of. But I think that it doesn't do too much to change my opinion of him. All the Drake May. He's gone from missing out on MVP by 1 vote to people saying that he's a bust because of one game, which is just just ridiculous, and it's one of the things that I hate most about sports, is our capacity to overreact to things like that. Like this guy can play, and he's going to continue to grow and develop. The you know I think the Patriots quarterback, whoever it was going to was going to be today, was always going to struggle against this defense behind that offensive line without one of the best kind of schemed games that we'd have seen from an offense. And that wasn't the case, and I think that put him in a position to fail. But as you mentioned, he kept battling, and yeah, I think again, perhaps the throw to Kyle Williams there, if he lands that on the money, as you say, he's got all the momentum, and maybe the Patriots make a real game of that in the last kind of 5 minutes or so. But I think it was that would have surprised me in the terms of it would have maybe not been a reflection of the way the game had gone throughout it. I think the stats as well paint an odd picture of the game because the Seattle defense was so dominant for so long, and then they had so much, but he did rally. Like, full credit to him. The Matt Collins throws were the throws of the game. They were the highest level of difficulty and best executed. And as you say, the catches themselves were excellent too. But the ability, when you've been taking a beating all game, to manage to step up and make those throws, I think is a massive testament to the strength of Drake May. And yeah, I think that he's a guy who, despite the difficulty that he had in this game, absolutely, I think he should be kind of up there as a top 10 quarterback. I think that maybe, again, he's another one that we maybe got a little bit too excited for too early. I think it's same as we saw it with CJ Stroud after a good season, that everyone's like, oh, this guy's right up there as one of the best in the league. Jaden Daniels after his excellent season as well. That this guy's maybe a top 5 quarterback. I'm like, I always have a little bit of caution there. I want to slow down on it a little, but I have no problem saying that Drake May goes into next season as a top 10 quarterback. I think that as the best in the league, I wouldn't jump in and say that immediately, but I think that. Right. But yeah, I think he's a really good player, someone that they can build around long term, and I wouldn't kind of fire the blame on this for this match, despite the 2 interceptions and a strip sack, kind of 2 interceptions and a fumble in a match in the Super Bowl. People are going to ask questions, but that situation, he was not set up to succeed in this match. It was always going to be tough.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't think that was, an indictment of him. And I think the numbers kind of reflect the fact that, he's got a good arm. He's got good ball placement. He's going to make good throws. He was just under a ridiculous amount of pressure, and he certainly didn't handle that well. He needs to learn a thing or two about pocket presence, about, sack avoidance, even if you're not running. And if you can mix that in with his athleticism, you could really be something to compete against, I guess. I was going to take a deeper look at that Kyle Williams play, but you know what? Let's move on. Defensively, look, I couldn't be more excited about the prospects of this team's defense. You had mentioned Christian Gonzalez earlier. He went out there and shut down the best receiver in the NFL. Period, point blank. There's just no other way to say it. There's no way to spin it. There's no anything else that can really be said. I talked about last week about he needs to go out there and earn that contract extension he wants. Guess what? He did. He's going to go out. He's going to get that 35, maybe more million a year, and he's going to earn every dime of it. I'm very happy with that. Craig Woodson is a freaking dog. Okay. He surprised a lot of people in the draft last year. Just not surprised, but he's taken in the right range, but a lot of people didn't know his name, I guess, is really the right way to say that. And the Patriots coaching staff, we saw them celebrate in the draft room when they picked him at 105. He played the most snaps of any Patriot defender this year, and he was all over the place in that game. I mean, tackles, tackle for loss, passes deflected. I thought he was going to get a pick at one point in time too. What stood out to you about this defense and what worked for the Patriots?
Yeah, I think certainly, talking about the back end, as we said early on, the aggression in kind of looking to undercut Darnold's options and making plays on the ball, kind of either the ones that they did get their hand on, or even just kind of putting doubt in Darnold's mind before he threw the ball. I think made a massive difference. I agree. Gonzalez was just phenomenal. The Shaheed's deep ball breakup was one of the best. Kind of given the scale of the moment and everything, one of the best cornerback plays I've seen. Because again, I'd in an article I wrote, I had a Shaheed deep ball as one of my 5 predictions for like that kind of what would make the Seahawks win the game. If they get if they finally get that connection working properly, the way that maybe people had envisioned when they traded for him, then that could make a massive difference to the outcome of the game. And kind of breaking up that play halted the momentum for the Seahawks. I mean, I say momentum. They didn't never really got it rolling on offense, but I think that you get a chunk play like that fairly early on makes a massive difference. So yeah, that was something that I thought was impressive. I think that I knew that Milton Williams was good. Obviously, the Eagles, I'd really liked him in kind of a more limited role. I thought that he'd been excellent and should have got more snaps there. And then, despite them having quite a loaded front when he was there, but I didn't expect him to win with such speed and regularity throughout the match. And like one of those ones, I knew he was good. I knew that there would be a few instances where he would just blow past somebody and blow a play up, but it felt like he was in the backfield every single play. Which, as much as the Seahawks O line's not phenomenal, we haven't seen that for most of the season. There hasn't been too many players who have just lived in the backfield. So that was an interesting one to see how they dealt with it, and I think it took all of Sam Darnold's escapability that to manage to avoid Williams having a huge impact on the game.
Yeah, I think they greased up Sam Darnold before the game. Okay, he could not get a hand on him. He was right there too, right there every time. What do you? Oh God, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's like we've had a long while of that with the Seahawks as well, where on the defensive side, where it's like no matter who the quarterback was, they would get there and it would be they've got a hand on him, nope, he's away. But yeah, I think that I wonder if the linebackers' injuries that they had coming into the game maybe had an impact in the run game. I thought they looked like they were not covering sideline to sideline quite as well as I expected. But again, that's maybe nitpicking because I think overall in coverage they took away a lot of Seattle's quick options out to there's a couple of plays that they'd schemed up to get AJ Barner out in the flat where it was occasionally they managed to complete plays to him or to the running back or whatever, but they were getting chopped down immediately. I think the Patriots, for the most part in the pass game, swarmed to the ball just about as well as the Seahawks did. Once that ball was in the air, which is a massive plus for any defense. So I think definitely again same as in the offense. There's plenty to be excited for Patriots fans. That there's not too many teams that have shut down the Seahawks passing game as well as that throughout this season because again I think Darnold was slightly less accurate on a throw by throw basis than he has been throughout the season. I think that everything was just slightly off. That maybe in another day completes a lot more of his passes to Cup or JSN kind of on the in breaking routes in the middle of the field and stuff. But I think that was a result of Darnold feeling like these windows were really, really tight every single time due to the excellent coverage. So, certainly the back end of that Patriots defense balled out, certainly for the first half, and then the pass rush did really well to for the most part. To put to get that early pressure, I think it is always frustrating when you have ones where it feels like guys aren't just managing to finish the play. So
Yeah.
I think that made a massive difference.
Yeah, I mean, if I had, fallen into a coma on Sunday morning and I woke up Monday morning and somebody handed me the box score and I went down and I said, Sam Darnold went 19 of 38 for just 202 yards, one touchdown. And then I scrolled on down and I said, all right, Rashid Shaheed, 2 catches for 27 yards. JSN, 4 catches on 10 targets for 27 yards. Well, shit, we won that game.
Yeah.
That's what I would think. Hell,
Yeah.
we won that game. No, we did not, because you know what? There was some shit we didn't do right too. And you talked about it right there, the missed tackles. The missed tackles were a real problem. Kenneth Walker was a serious issue to deal with, 161 scrimmage yards, 135 rushing yards, and 114 of those rushing yards came wide left or wide right. Very little between the tackles production, about 20 of those yards, 21 of those yards. Some quick rough math in my head there. Came between the tackles. I felt like the linebackers, like I said, I had showed that right there with the missed tackles. I felt like the linebackers were struggling to tackle. I felt like it looked like a couple of them, to me, it looked like Jack Gibbons did not belong on a Super Bowl roster. He belongs on a practice squad somewhere. It just felt like there were a couple of these guys that were just playing way out of their depth, way out of their league. And the Patriots just, frankly, I thought personnel-wise in a couple instances, they just weren't really armed to be in this scenario. What did you think about the run game and how Kenneth Walker was able to take advantage of what was known to be a weakness for this Patriots team coming into this game?
Yeah, I think that was the thing. The run game for Seattle was always likely to have a big impact on the outcome of the game because, yeah, I mean, to be fair, the missed tackles stats, I'd be interested to go through. I should have looked in advance. In terms of how many missed tackles Walker forces on his own on a weekly basis, because the guy is about as elusive a ball carrier as just about any in the NFL. I think. Also there was one that went a bit viral a couple of weeks ago against Omar Spates, the LA Rams linebacker, where Spates had him dead to rights for a tackle for loss, and then just suddenly Walker was 3 yards sideways and in an open space with Spates falling flat on his face. It's I think that definitely factors in. He's such a tough guy to tackle, and it's been obviously everyone playing fantasy football, I think, is throughout the year is kind of led to the storyline around Walker being he's doesn't get his red zone carries, so he doesn't get what's going on here. They're splitting him and Charbonnet, and since Charbonnet got his bad injury, Walker has been phenomenal. It was the first time this season that he's had 20 carries in a game, and he made it count. Obviously had a long kind of touchdown run brought back for a hold as well. It could have been an even bigger night for him. I think that the tackling from the Patriots, as I mentioned, I think they struggled with, just not even in terms of the missed tackles themselves at times. They just struggled to with their angles to cut off Walker once he got outside. You saw guys taking kind of some fairly dodgy routes to make the tackle, and as a result, what should have been maybe a 12-yard gain after a nice play from the Seahawks turned into 30 down the sideline. Just because nobody was there to make the tackle. So I think, I think the Seahawks called the running game pretty well. It wasn't actually the best that they've blocked for the most part in terms of the tight ends weren't quite as good in terms of the consistency across the game as they have been recently, because that's been a massive feature the last few weeks. Was AJ Barner and Eric Saubert in the run game, creating holes for Ken Walker. But yeah, I think the fact that Walker was getting these chunk plays of kind of I think they had 30 and 29 in the same drive in the first half, and
Yeah.
that's a backbreaker in a game where there's no there's no real consistent offense. To have chunk plays like that without having to do too much for them is where the game was where Seattle were able to build a bit of momentum, certainly in the first half, just by kind of getting downfield, getting 3 points, and just tacking more and more onto that scoreline. Because when it got up past 9-0, it's a struggle at that stage to see the Patriots scoring twice, with the way that the offense was going. So it made such a difference just managing to churn out those plays. And yeah, I think a lot of it was down to poor angles by the Patriots defense, and I hadn't expected that, because there's a few guys that I know you mentioned that there are some personnel lacking in terms of the quality that you need at that level, but there's some good players there as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, that surprised me a little, because I didn't think that the missed tackles would be an issue. I thought that the Seahawks would have to work. It would be a case of 5 or 6 yards at a time for Walker to maybe get up to a good total by the end of the game and keep the Seahawks moving. But it was more, kind of that he'd pick up the big 20 or 30 yarders, and then very little in between, which wasn't really the pattern that I was expecting in this game.
Huh. Yeah, yeah. I think that the run game for Seattle was really the difference for me between the two offenses, beyond that pocket presence we talked about, because I felt like if Seattle had struggled to run the ball as badly as New England had, Darnold would have been under even more pressure, and it would have been hard to see how he would have dealt with that, if he would have dealt with that better like he did through the rest of what he had to deal with, or if he would have if it would have been an issue. I thought the run game really made a huge impact for the team there. And I think that, what you had talked about in terms of directional running and being able to run outside, and kind of being able to set up the run. Like, I felt like the Patriots coaching plan was extremely vanilla. I thought it was offensively, defensively, the whole package. I felt like they got away from what had got them there. They had, over the past few weeks, we'd seen a lot of like heavy sets, 6-0 linemen. We've seen a lot of Thayer Munford Jr. on the field, creating run lanes and so forth, and really getting creative in the run game. And we didn't see that on our side. It's interesting. I was looking at the next gen stats stuff, and it's the I'm sorry, my cat is a terrorist. The But I was looking at the next gen stats stuff, and the interesting thing that didn't even strike me while I was watching it, but every time that Travion Henderson ran the ball, he ran left. Every time that Ramondre Stevenson ran the ball, he ran right. It was like just simple shit like that. That's like, details, small details matter, small predictable things matter. And it's because of things like that I actually wasn't surprised to hear the Devin Witherspoon quote that we talked about earlier, because it's like attention to details, and those are the small things that matter. And it really interested me. I heard several people opine something along these lines of like, what the hell was that coaching staff doing for 2 weeks? Because it's like they just stripped the playbook down to bare bones. And, we had talked about Seattle kind of being not really a simplified defense, but like staying in this formation, putting their 11 guys on the field and just saying, we're better than you, prove that we're not. And it almost was like the Patriots trying to do that, because it was like you weren't trying anything tricky. You weren't trying anything nifty. There was nothing clever. There was no mixing anything up. It was just lining it up, dropping it back, and letting you have a field day at Will Campbell and Drake May and whoever else's expense. And I just felt like the coaching matchup was really where the game was won and lost.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think, again, yeah, like I mentioned, I was surprised that there wasn't more kind of just moving the point of attack from the Patriots. The Seahawks beating offensive linemen one-on-one with some regularity, then why not get guys out in the move and try to. The Seahawks have struggled at times this season with dealing with screen passes, with kind of quick throws to receivers and tight ends, and again, I was surprised that it was just a case of, as you say, it seemed like pretty basic concepts for the most part in terms of what they were willing to try, which I don't know. I understand, wanting to play kind of straightforward football, play clean football, and kind of hope that that's enough to win the game. But when you come up against a defense like that, I think it was always going to require something, even just as a backup option. If you start the game keeping things very simple and straightforward, that didn't seem like too much changed for the Patriots. There wasn't a right, okay, this isn't working for us, so we're going to try, something different. It all seemed to be quite, not robotic, but you said vanilla. I think that was a good description of it. Yeah, I think that it was, that there was not too much. I was going to say trickery. That obviously implies completely out of the ordinary type plays, but just something with a bit of flash, a bit of just a change up here or there to throw Seattle's the pass rush off its rhythm. I think that the coverage for Seattle was excellent for the most part, which also factors in, but and maybe made a bit of a difference there. But I don't know. I found it very odd that they were willing to stick for so long with kind of fairly basic run and pass concepts, which, I mean, they've got the talent, and certainly in terms of that running back room, I think that they've got mobility in the offensive line in places. So I think that there was certainly some scope there for them to try to get people out in the move. I think that if you run plays that you've got an old lineman keeping Devon Witherspoon out the road, then that's that out wide and creating a lane for him. That's always going to prove effective. The Seattle safeties are not great at disengaging from blocks when, even if it's tight ends or receivers, get their hands on them. So I think that there was plenty, even to my limited mind, that I could have thought of that would have maybe changed things up a bit and disrupted the rhythm for Seattle's defense. But it just keeping things the same led to it being a bit of an onslaught for 3 quarters of this match.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was comparable to use a baseball comparison of a pitcher walking out there, throwing an 85-mile-per-hour fastball right down the middle, having it get smacked out for a home run, and then going, "Oh, how about I throw you another 85-mile-per-hour fastball right down the middle?" 10, 12 times in a row. And just never learning the lesson of throw the curveball. Christ, dude, do something different, anything. I don't care what you do.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was just a real lack of any sort of misdirection or anything to kind of surprise the Seahawks defense. Because again, if you can manage to run one play, which makes the defense think, which makes Mike McDonald go, "Oh, maybe I can't afford to send Witherspoon and Damon Warry on this snap, because what if the Patriots decide to do this and suddenly we're exposed?" It felt like it was a fairly safe bet for the Seahawks being aggressive on defense, because there wasn't too much of a risk factor, which is just bizarre for a Super Bowl with a talented offense.
Yeah, I mean, I had seen a lot of historical numbers that did not favor the Patriots, who like one of the worst playoff performances ever, and not even necessarily as a criticism, as a they shouldn't have been here, don't forget that sort of thing. Like they were playing out of their league, which is fair enough. They were. One last thing that I think we need to touch on in specific to the game, and this is specifically because they were so damn good, is the punter. The special teams was phenomenal in this game. Look, the kicker was fine. He was great. He had a lot of kicks. Wonderful. There wasn't anything in there that was jaw-dropping to me from the kicker, but the punter just repeatedly, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, to be honest. I'd have to look it up.
Michael Dixon.
Yeah,
Michael Dixon.
Yeah, Dixon. Yes. My goodness, that guy if we had half the punter that Seattle does, and I don't know how you felt about our punter from your perspective, but it was just me. I just watched him in Denver, and in Denver, Behringer sucked. He was terrible. Weather notwithstanding, I don't give it. I honestly don't care about that excuse in that particular. He kicked a 26-yard punt in Denver. But I didn't think he was good. I thought he repeatedly, I was like, man, why couldn't he have gotten another 10 yards out of that punt? But Dixon, on the other hand, repeatedly coffin cornered, repeatedly put us down inside the 5, inside the 10. We were constantly starting drives backed up with our backs right up against the end zone because of the work of that punter. Specifically, the coverage unit was fine too, but that punter, man, if they had given him the MVP, I wouldn't have been super mad about it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I was pleased for him because I think I mentioned him on the pod last week, and he's somebody who has been kind of at the one of the best in the league for a good long while now. And obviously punters don't tend to get too much recognition, understandably, on a kind of national basis. But yeah, he was excellent. It was kind of an example of the very best that he provides. Because obviously that was another one that I think the Seahawks, like I said, they just had quiet confidence for the most part because it was always a case of don't introduce kind of a wild card into this matchup. They thought if we just keep putting them, don't allow big returns because obviously the Patriots got an excellent returner. And that's something that can flip a game, as we saw with Shaheed's one against the Rams earlier this season. Like it's a massive momentum shift in a game if you can get a really good return. So yeah, just saying, right, keep them deep, trust our defense, and that's what Dixon did. I think as you said, the coverage was mostly pretty good too, but it didn't. There wasn't even too much for them to do for the most part because even the ones that were fielded were right next to the touchline. It was, also there was one return I think that the Patriots got some yards, but it was called back for a block in the back.
Right. Yeah. Which I thought was a bad call, to be honest. Del Pettis barely touched him.
It was soft, yeah. No, I thought it was after no penalties for so long. I thought there was a couple of wee soft ones here or there. Yeah. But I was pleased for the punter because he's now kind of getting a little bit of attention that I think he's deserved throughout his career. I love the stat as well in the broadcast that he was the only player who was the highest paid at his position in the NFL in that Super Bowl matchup.
Interesting.
Which is a bizarre one when you think about it. Obviously, it's the kind of a match that's the best of the best, and he's I believe he's the only one who's the highest paid player at his position, which is wild.
That is interesting.
It's kind of drawn some scrutiny in Seattle that, well, sure he's a great punter, but he got I can't remember the contract exactly, but they're paying him money, and yeah, he's worth every penny of it. He's fantastic. He's also he's an Aussie. He's from Australia, and he has a different kind of approach to the sport. As a result, he's really willing to try things up. He was talking already on the Pat McAfee show about kind of how he's got a couple of things up his sleeve for next season that he can't wait to bring out. That he's so it's I like that because obviously punting, when you look at it, could be a fairly limited a limited role in terms of what you do. And right. He's certainly somebody who looks to try to kind of innovate wherever possible to kind of strengthen his performance. We saw the kind of real line drive punt towards the end of the game that went out of bounds just near the goal line. So yeah, I think he's a massive plus for Seattle, and the special teams as a whole is very, very good, very reliable, which I would never have said just over a year ago. So full credit to Jay Harbaugh for his work there.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall both teams in the game did a great job of keeping the ball away from the weapon on the other team's special teams, right? Because Rashid Shaheed didn't really get a lot of opportunities either. The coverage unit on the Patriots is probably the best performing unit outside of the interior defensive line um, on the team in the game. Um, but like I said, Behringer repeatedly just didn't get that extra 10 yards or 15 yards that Dixon did. And I thought in many cases that's just the difference. Like when you're starting right up against, your your back right up against the touchdown, right up against the end zone. It's tricky to get off there, especially when your run game's sputtering and struggling to gain yards. And I think to me, that's an incredibly undervalued aspect of the game, a good punter. I wish there were better statistics or better ways to quantify their value, because the value of Dixon over Behringer just in that particular game probably amounts to 50, 60, 70 yards, which is, a punter going for 70 yards in a game doesn't make sense to say, but at the same time, it quantifies the value and, kind of makes it make more sense for a lot of people in the game. But I thought, man, he was really a difference in this game. And I think it's a symbolic of attention to detail throughout the organization. Because it's easy to overlook a punter and say, oh, he's just a punter, whatever. No. Go get those extra 10, 15 yards every time you have to punt it, right? Go get that good ball placement because that does change games. And it's the attention to these small types of details that's the difference between the guys hoisting the Lombardi trophy and the guys going home, disappointed.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's often goes under the radar, as you say. And again, I think it would have been quite a statement if they'd given a punter MVP. But as you say, it made a massive difference for the Seahawks. And I didn't notice the Patriots punter being as bad, but there was a few times that was like, okay, that's a punt that you expect to be fielded inside the 20. That's a punt. There was one that I think Shaheed took on the 10-yard line. That I'm like, that's a punt from midfield, certainly. Like you should be pinning them back. Sam Darnold should be feeling some heat in his own end zone on the next play. And just having that extra 5-10 yards, it does make a difference over the course of a game. Just to the offense's mentality, I think, aside from anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're a little bit past the hour, running a little bit late here today. But going forward, obviously the Patriots have some questions that need to be answered and some roster decisions and so forth to make. I know Seattle's got some off-season stuff coming up as well. You've got Kenneth Walker as an unrestricted free agent potentially coming back, maybe not. Well, who knows? Guy sure made himself a lot of money. I think also, side note, I think he's going to get overdrafted in some fantasy leagues. I think no matter whether he stays in Seattle or not, people are going to forget he's still not particularly great on passing downs. He's not a pass protector. They only asked him to do that twice in the Super Bowl and once, I think, in the couple weeks leading up to the game. He's not great at receiving the ball, but people are going to remember that 161 all-purpose yards in the Super Bowl, and I think that he's going to end up being a first-round pick that folks maybe regret, and maybe a guy who gets paid a whole lot of money by somebody, whether it's Seattle or not, and they live to regret that long contract also. But you've got a couple other guys, Boye Mafe, Rashid Shaheed, come to mind. When you talk about what you expect to see out of Seattle in this offseason and how they're going to stay, atop the league next year.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that Walker will now stay because of Zach Charbonne's injury. I'd be surprised if they overhauled the entire running back room potentially for the start of next season. So I think that most likely Walker will stay. He's made himself a bit of money with his performances in the postseason, and yeah, I think he absolutely deserves that contract. A big thing for him this year as well. He was healthy for every match. That's been an issue throughout his career so far. So that's another big tick for him and something that I think might make the Seahawks more likely to retain him. Boye Mafe is one that I think might leave. I think that it's an edge class this year where there's plenty of guys with a bit of upside. So we could see Seattle take a chance on an edge rusher there to add to Demarcus Lawrence, Chenna Nwosu, and Derek Hall. So I wouldn't be surprised if they let Maffei walk. He's a nice player, but the production doesn't always match the kind of the eye test. So it's tough to balance where he'll fall in terms of the salary that he'll generate for his next deal. And then the secondary is the other real big one, I think. We've got Reek Willen, Josh Jobe, and Kobe Bryant all free agents now. I think that it's unlikely that they let both Willen and Jobe walk. I've seen loads of mock drafts taking a cornerback for Seattle in round 1, which I'm not necessarily on board with. So I think, I think that they probably keep Willen around and try to draft a kind of well-rounded corner to add to the room there, because I think that Willen, on a rotational basis, like he's been used the second half of this season, has some, kind of, I know that he was responsible for the first touchdown, but he's got some, some physical attributes that you just don't find too often in the league. Whereas Josh Jobe is, he's solid, kind of a feisty corner who works hard, always competes. But I think that he's maybe slightly more replaceable in that room. I'm not convinced that they keep Kobe Bryant around either. He's, his open field tackling is very hit or miss. And the Seahawks have Ty Okada, who is filled in really well throughout the season. It wouldn't surprise me if that's a position that they, I think again it'll come down to Bryant's contract demands. If he's wanting the same sort of money that they're paying Julian Love, I think the Seahawks maybe look elsewhere. Because even in the Super Bowl, Bryant had a couple of plays that would have had a pick if he hadn't been so focused on making a big hit on the I think it was a tight end for New England, and had another one that he dropped as well. And
Hunter Henry, he got him good on one of those hits, man.
No, he did. It was a fair impact. I just there's something about when he's on the field, I feel a little bit less secure about the back end of that defense than than when he's So for example, he missed a couple of games through injury, and it was commented on a lot in the media that the Seahawks open field tackling was vastly improved. So again, it'll be an interesting one because they have the cap space to probably keep all of these guys plus Rashid Shaheed. Like the Seahawks are certainly top 10 in the league. I think it's sixth,
sixth most,
in cap space. So they have the money to potentially keep any of these ones that they want, but I think it just comes down to, again, what do they value most in terms of what the priorities there are. And for me, I think Ken Walker, I think Rashid Shaheed, again, that it'll be interesting to see what sort of money he generates, because we've seen, again, even in the last year or so, Tutu Atwell got, 10 million for the Rams this year, and I don't even know if he reached 10 catches. We've had Jacoby Myers getting a big deal. Christian Kirk obviously had his big deal recently. Kind of upwards of 15 million at time for these guys in terms of what they're getting a year. So that'll be an interesting one to see if he sticks around for next season, because also the trade for him means there's a little bit of an obligation there to keep him around for longer than one season. So
you've already got a lot invested.
Yeah, no, exactly, and it's not the deepest wide receiver room in the world. So I think it's certainly going to be a massive off season for Seattle. I think the best thing for them is if they can keep most of this roster around for fairly cheap, which for the most part I think they should be able to do. And then you can look at maybe one or two upgrades in key areas. You can look to maybe take a shot in the draft and find your long-term successor to some of the older veteran players on that roster as well. So I think it'll certainly be interesting to see who they decide to keep around out of this free agent class.
Yeah, that's a couple interesting things there to me is the Tariq Woolen versus Josh Jobe thing. I would have thought the other way because Woolen's been volatile at times to say the least, and I thought he was on the trade block earlier this year. And then the Kobe Bryant thing. I mean, this is a deep safety class too in the draft, so you might be onto something there. You know, you had Kamari Ramsey type of guy, something like that. I don't know exactly what you'd be looking for back there, but someone in that range for sure. The 40 to 60 range to me right now seems like about the sweet spot to go get yourself a good safety. And
Oh,
then
there's some really good guys there. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and then I think with Kenneth Walker, the question is going to end up being to franchise or to not franchise because the franchise tag I think right now is about 14 million. Gets you 1 year, guaranteed 14 million in his pocket. Nobody's real happy, but nobody's real mad either. So, typically
Yeah,
that's a signifier of a good deal, right?
yeah. No, true, true. I've not heard that mentioned too much actually, but it would be an interesting option for him because if obviously another full season with Charbonnet maybe missing for the first part of it, if he can kind of pick up where he left off in the playoffs, then he might earn himself another deal. But yeah, no, that'd be an interesting one actually. So yeah, we'll see what they do with him because it's going to in many ways define their off season. He's the biggest star out of those upcoming free agents certainly.
Yeah, for certain. All right. Well, listen, I wanted to thank you for your time, Peter, stopping by here, giving us a Seattle perspective on this game. Um, I am happy the way that this went, the way our 2 episodes went. And I think, I look forward to maybe doing some draft content together down the road, either here or on Draft Professors, either way. Why don't you give the fans, the folks in the chat, a way to follow your material or find the next things you're doing. And closing.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Really enjoyed these 2 episodes, and yeah, would love to kind of link up again for more potentially draft related stuff in the future. So you can find all my content on my X page at Peter Quinn 1997. I'm a Seahawks writer for Huddle UK, and I'm alongside Randy on the Draft Professors Mrs. Our Relevant podcast to discuss the upcoming draft prospects as draft season really kicks off in earnest now with the conclusion of the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thanks for stopping by, checking out the episode. Leave your comments. Tell us what you think about what we said here, what you think about how your team did. And if you're not a fan of the Patriots or the Seahawks, let me know what your team is and how your team's going to approach the offseason. See the comment in the chat there from Mike. Thank you so much. The Seattle perspective and the other side, we love to get a look at that through that lens. We don't want to be myopic here. So yeah, again, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Listen, subscribe. It's right down there somewhere. Tell your friends, share it, etc. All of that helps. It's all free. We love our fans and we love the interaction in the chat. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll be back here at 9 a.m. to do a little Patriots roster self-evaluation. We're going to talk about who could stay and who could go. All right. Have a great day, folks.